All right, today let's dive into one of the most iconic monsters of all time, Cerberus, the legendary Hound of Hades. I mean, he's the original guard dog, right? The ultimate gatekeeper, and a creature that has been haunting our collective imagination for literally thousands of years.
But here's the thing, that classic image we all have in our heads, the three-headed dog, turns out that's just one piece of a much, much stranger and, frankly, more terrifying story. So if you think you know Cerberus, well, you might be in for a surprise.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Cerberus had one main job: guard the gates of the underworld. But his role wasn't really to keep the living out. According to the poet Hesiod, he was actually pretty friendly to newcomers. His real job was to make sure the dead stayed dead, to devour anyone who dared to try and escape back to the world of the living. His Greek name is Cerberus, and his official title is the Hound of Hades. And he was born from pure, unadulterated monster stock. I'm talking about parents like Echidna, who was half woman, half snake, and Typhon, a monstrous giant with snake feet. So, yeah, you could say being a monster was literally in his blood. And believe me, it wasn't just his parents. His entire family was a who's who of mythological terrors. This family tree is just absolutely wild. I mean, just look at this lineup. Cerberus wasn't some kind of one-off monster. He came from a long line of multi-headed, nightmarish creatures. His brother, Orthrus, a two-headed dog. Another brother was the famous Lernaean Hydra, and his sister was the Chimera, part lion, part goat, part snake. With a family reunion like that, a normal little puppy was never gonna happen. Which brings us to the really big question. How many heads did he actually have? Well, the answer, it turns out, depends entirely on who you ask and when you ask them. Now, this is where our modern image just gets completely thrown out the window. One of the very first accounts we have from Hesiod gives Cerberus 50 heads. 50. A few centuries later, the poet Pindar says, nope, it's 100. Then you get the Roman poet Horace, who gets super specific. One main dog head surrounded by 100 smaller snake heads. The three-headed version we all think of, that only became the standard accepted version much, much later, during the Roman era. And this whole snake thing, it wasn't just some random throwaway detail. It was absolutely central to his identity as a monster. I mean, remember his parents, Echidna and Typhon. These serpentine traits were a family inheritance. When you dig into ancient art and literature, they are filled with these descriptions. He often had a tail that was a living, hissing snake. Sometimes snakes grew right out of his body. He was described as having a mane made entirely of serpents. Ovid said his necks were vile with snakes and that his mouth dripped with venom. So we're not just talking about a dog here. This thing was a writhing, slithering nightmare. Now, Cerberus really only has one starring role in a major myth, but oh boy, is it a big one. It's one of the greatest tales in all of Greek mythology, his epic showdown with the one and only Heracles. This was it, the 12th and final labor for Heracles. King Eurystheus ordered him to go down into the underworld and bring Cerberus back alive. Now, the king didn't actually want to see the dog. He was pretty sure this was the one mission that would finally get rid of Heracles for good. The whole quest was an epic in itself. First, to even get into the land of the dead, Heracles had to be initiated into the secret Eleusinian mysteries. Then, guided by the gods Hermes and Athena, he made his way down and confronted Hades himself. Amazingly, Hades said yes, he could take Cerberus, but there was a catch. Heracles then had to physically drag this monster all the way up into the mortal world, show him to the king, and then, get this, take him all the way back. And this is what made it the ultimate challenge. According to the writer Apollodorus, Hades' one condition was that Heracles had to subdue the beast without using any weapons. No club, no bow, no sword, nothing. Just pure brute strength against the most terrifying monster you can imagine. And because he's Heracles, of course he couldn't resist a little side quest. While he was down there, he found the hero Theseus, who was magically stuck to something called the Chair of Forgetfulness as punishment. So, naturally, Heracles just ripped him free and brought him back to the surface. Adding another legendary feat to his resume. So, a story this wild, this fantastic, you just know people were going to be skeptical, right? Even back in the ancient world, people were trying to figure out, okay, what's the real story here? What's behind the myth? And that basically led people down two different paths. The first was rationalization, where they tried to find some logical, real-world source for the myth. The second was allegory, where philosophers looked for a deeper, symbolic meaning hidden inside the story. The rational explanations are just fascinating. One early writer argued the Hound of Hades wasn't a dog at all, but a massive, venomous snake whose bite meant instant death. Another suggested that Cerberus was just a normal dog who happened to come from a city called Tricranium, which literally means 3 heads. My personal favorite, though, is the version where Cerberus was just some king's really vicious dog used to test out his daughter's potential husbands.
But then you have the allegorical side, which is just as compelling. One scholar claimed Cerberus symbolized the earth itself, which, consumes all bodies. Another saw his 3 heads as the 3 stages of life when death can strike: when you're a baby, when you're young, and when you're old. And of course, centuries later, Dante put Cerberus in his Inferno guarding the gluttons, making him this timeless symbol for just out-of-control, ravenous greed.
And it's these powerful, symbolic meanings that explain why Cerberus, never really went away. His name and his image still stand for these huge, multi-pronged challenges and for unbreakable security. I mean, his influence is all around us, in places you might not even expect. The Cerberus computer protocol from MIT, that's a gatekeeper for our modern data. There's a constellation named Cerberus. The scientific name for dog-faced water snakes is the genus Cerberus. And even extreme weather gets the name, like the Cerberus heat wave that hit Europe in 2023. So that kind of leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? We've followed Cerberus from a 50-headed horror to a 3-headed dog, and now all the way to a piece of code protecting our digital lives. Why does the name of this ancient, mythical guardian still resonate so powerfully today when we talk about the things we need to overcome or the things we need protection from?